My name is Emma, and today I would like to talk about something very important. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Crooked Kingdom is the second and last book in the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. It is beautiful. Look at it. I've been waiting for it, and it's here, and I finished it, and I loved it. It met all of my expectations. It way surpassed all of my expectations. If I read a first book of a series and absolutely loved it, I'm always hesitant as to the second book, and since this is a duology, if I didn't like the second book, it would have not been as great. But I absolutely loved this book. It is one of my favorites that I've read this entire year, and I'm reading 100 books this year, so I've read a lot of books. If you don't know, Crooked Kingdom is the second book, Six of Crows duology. In Six of Crows, we follow Kaz Brecker and his crew. It's a heist book. It is in the same world as the Grisha trilogy. If you have not read the Grisha trilogy and you read this duology, you will be spoiled for some things that happen in the Grisha trilogy, but it's not necessary to read. I read Six of Crows first, then I read the Grisha trilogy, and then I read Crooked Kingdom. I'm really happy that I did that way because there were so many things that happened in Crooked Kingdom. Some of my favorite characters from the Grisha trilogy showed up. I was losing my mind in those scenes, and if you hadn't read the Grisha trilogy, you wouldn't have experienced it the same way. I love these characters. They are so diverse and complicated. We follow lots of different point of views in these books. There's no point of view that I'm bored while reading, usually when we switch point of views. There's one that I don't like as much as the other, at least in the beginning, but with these books, there's no blah character. There's no point of view that I'm like, ugh, when do we get to the next one? I love them all. We have 6 main characters in these books that we follow. They all have fully formed pasts and wounds and traumas and family history. They are so well developed and so diverse and so complex, and they're all babes, and I love them so much. Usually I get tired of one world when an author writes a ton of books in that style, except for Cassandra Clare, she is exempt. This is another world that I just feel like she could go on writing forever because it is so wide. This book wrecked me so bad. I had so many feelings. I was so satisfied with the ending. I can't imagine it being any more perfect than it is. This is as good as it gets. A random little note, I make book playlists on Spotify. It's something I started just to do for myself because it's really fun. When I finish a book and I'm in a mourning period and I can't seem to get over the feels, I'll make a book playlist and it helps. So I do have a book playlist for the first book, Six of Crows. It's one of my favorites that I've ever made. I listen to it all the time. If you want to listen to that, I'll put the link in the description. That's all I'm going to say for this non-spoilers part. So if you haven't read the book, leave now because I need to talk about a lot of stuff that goes down in here. I don't want you to be spoiled. Okay, I put the book on my shelf. So if you're still here and you haven't read the book, now you know. That's your cue. Make sure you're gone. I don't even know where to start. I have so many notes on this book. I'm really going to try and just talk about what's most important to me, but this video might end up being really long, and if it is, I'm sorry. It's really interesting to me how Leigh Bardugo, with Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, the first chapter is always from someone's point of view who's not important. And I think it's a really good literary technique because she introduces something important with that first chapter, but it's not a character. I squealed when the first chapter was Wyland's point of view, or the second chapter. I knew we were getting his point of view in this book, but I just got so excited when I saw his name at the top of the chapter thing, and it was so cute. I love Wyland. So we start this book. Inej has been captured by Van Eck, and they're scheming to get her back. And I liked this part where Kaz was pretending that he just needed her back because she's an investment and she's part of the crew, and that's just what they do. When Kaz and Wyland go to Smeat's house and they run into his daughter, Kaz being all creepy and trying to scare her, the idea of Dirty Hands being the boogeyman, basically, just, I loved it. Is that weird that I liked that part? I'm not sure. I feel like Kaz was really wise in this book. Later, when they break into Van Eck's house, I think, he's giving Wyland all this advice about, Ginger, what are you doing? My dog is here. He just seemed so wise in this book. And I forget that these characters are like 17, 18. Matthias and Nina were the cutest in this whole book, and I'm not going to talk about the ending until I get to the ending. I'm just going to talk about how adorable they were and how much I loved them. Ginger staring at me. There she is. She's so cute. Matthias is all reserved and dignified, and Nina's like so outgoing, and she's always making him blush. Why did Kue pretend to not know Kirch very well? I didn't really get that. I mean, I got that one part where he was pretending to not know Kirch just so he could like spend some more time with Jesper. I think I missed something there because he was pretending to not know Kirch very well for a long time. That seemed strange to me. I love all of their slang when they meet someone and they're like, what business? And the whole no mourners, no funerals thing. I want to learn this slang and speak like that. Inej is just the best character ever. I love Inej. She's a queen. When she's taken captive and she's in that room, she's blindfolded and it's dark, and she still starves herself so that she can try and squeeze through this vent and get out. Even though the guy knew that she was going to try and escape, she still almost gets out. Like when she shows up in that theater, she runs across all the theater seats, jumps onto the stage, runs right past Van Eck and like up this rope and almost gets out. When they almost broke her legs, that was just terrible, that whole scene. Yes, she started freaking out when they went to break her legs, obviously. But still, she was so solid and strong and like, you're the man who sits idly by, congratulating yourself on your decency, while the monster eats his fill. At least a monster has teeth and a spine. I really enjoyed getting to see Jesper and his dad in this book. He's so vulnerable and soft with his dad, and he's not snarky. I love how Jesper's dad is all wholesome and he doesn't fit in with the crew at all. I really liked getting to see one of their parents. The scene where Wylan and Jesper went to meet his dad. Their banter was so funny. This scene was hilarious. Jesper points his gun at someone and says, move. And the dad's like, Jesper, what are you doing? And Jesper's like, oh, relax. It's basically like a handshake here. The dad's like, is that true? Marlon's like, absolutely. And then the guy who Jesper's pointing his gun at is like, no. I was reading this book and I was like, hold on. Matthias and Nina haven't kissed yet? What? Did I miss that? But like Matthias is all formal. I need to court you. And things go a certain way in Fjerda. And Nina's like, no. Matthias. Another part that perfectly demonstrates how amazing Inej is. That scene where for a second we think that Van Eck actually bested Kaz. And then this guy comes in and he's like, he took your wife. And Inej just starts cracking up, and then she breaks Van Eck's nose. Have I mentioned what a queen she is? Vile, ruthless, amoral. Isn't that why you hired Kaz in the first place? Because he does the things no one else dares. Go on, Van Eck. Break my legs and see what happens. Dare him. Every time the crew does their thing, you know what I'm talking about, like the one-word answer thing. Every time they do it, it's hilarious, and I should get tired of it, but I don't. Kaz just cracks me up this whole book, because it's so obvious that he's, like, totally in love with Inej. She's been kidnapped for a couple days. The first thing he says to her is, your knives? And I'm like, good job, Kaz. Good job. You really communicated what you were feeling there. Probably my favorite thing about this book is that Leigh Bardugo handles trauma and abuse and mental illness in a way that is so realistic and believable, and she blends it seamlessly into the story. It's not something that the whole story revolves around. These kids who've been through traumatic things, whose lives have been terrible, would have all these mental issues. I'm really grateful for that in these books. It's probably one of my favorite things. Just seeing Inej and Kaz's relationship develop and the struggles that they have, seeing them work through it together, make leeway, but also not be completely healed. I can't tell you how much I appreciated that. You know, all the things that Kaz thinks about Inej but doesn't say out loud, those things made me swoon. She would ask about the net, and in his mind he would think, I couldn't bear to watch you fall. But in reality, he's just like, yeah, you protect your investments. Kaz and Inej go to see Perhaskell, and he's trying to get Kaz to give Inej back. Kaz is like, okay, fine, as soon as I find her. And Perhaskell's like, what? And he turns around, and Inej has just disappeared, and Kaz is like trying not to laugh. Oh, and then Kaz is being stubborn, and they walk like up all these stairs, and he realizes that she tricked him. The decent, honest, pious wraith had outsmarted him. Curse you and all your saints, he said to no one at all, and then he realized she was smiling. I'm just over here screaming, don't mind me. I also like how Kaz expresses his feelings for her in violence. He can't comfort her, he's not able to, so he's just like, I'm gonna kill that guy, I'm gonna rip out his insides and hang him like streamers. He does something really violent, or he threatens violence, and I'm like, aw, so cute. Matthias being all hard eyes for Nina in her ugly matronly sweater vest. I'm not going to spoil for stuff in the Grisha trilogy unless it was spoiled for in Crooked Kingdom. So the stuff that they spoiled for in Crooked Kingdom, I am going to talk about that stuff, but I won't spoil for anything else in the Grisha trilogy. That said, every time that Nikolai or the Darkling was mentioned, I just kind of freaked out a little bit. There was one paragraph where the Darkling, the Sun Summoner, and Nikolai were all mentioned in the same paragraph, and I was losing my mind. I hated how small Zoya made Nina feel. Nina shrunk back into that girl that she was, and I hated that, but I liked how Matthias acted in that situation. Like, he reminded Nina that she's not just some soldier to be commanded anymore. She's not that girl that she was. She's stronger. The scene where Wylan went to visit his mother's gravestone and then realized that she was alive, that scene made me cry. It was like she almost recognized him or sensed that was him, because he still looked like Kuwei at that point. The paintings and Jesper taking one and Wylan crying in the middle of the road. Couldn't handle it. Ugh. Dunyasha, I hate that lady. I seriously hope she's dead, because I felt a little bit like maybe she wasn't dead. The fact that she thought she had Lantsov blood and was a threat to Nikolai's crown, I was like, no way. You stay away from Sobaka, King Nikolai. Don't touch him. Inej is just the queen of sass. Like, she just fought Dunyasha. She's stuck full of a ton of throwing stars, and Nina's like, who is that lady? Dunyasha, the white blade of something or other. She really wants to kill me. Possibly everyone. When Kaz and Wylan are on missions together, I just think it's hilarious. Kaz is like, ugh, this kid, he doesn't know how to do anything. And Wylan's just being cute, as he always is. Kaz freaking Brecker burns a hole in the ground, collapses it, and then lands on the dining room table of Van Eck's house in the middle of a dinner. And I can't believe this. Can't believe people are still underestimating Kaz Brecker, Pekka Rollins, and the leader of the Dregs. I forgot what his name is right now. But everybody seems to still underestimate Kaz, and I don't understand why. This was the only time that the plan went seriously wrong, and they didn't really accomplish anything. It always gets a little bit messed up, but Kaz always has triple plans. But this time, this plan did not exactly go as planned. And he was like, let's see. Inej fell 20 stories, and Wylan's like, yeah, we put a serious hole in my father's dining room. Nina can raise the dead. Nina tries to rope Kaz into the group hug, and Inej is the one who says, leave him alone, and I can't with this couple. I just can't. Inej. One of my favorite scenes was when Jesper and Kaz get into a fight, because one, it was hilarious. Two, it was just the climax of their animosity in this book. Wylan's like, guys, what are you doing? You need to stop this. Nina's like, yeah, well, Jesper hasn't shot him yet. And Inej is like, and Kaz isn't using his cane, so they're not trying to kill each other, so it's alright, just let them beat each other up. Jesper's dad comes in. Jesper Llewellyn Fahey. Can we just take a minute, please? The scene was wonderful. Kaz retying her bandages. I loved it because we saw progress with them, but it was realistic. Leigh Bardugo didn't compromise reality or the severity of what they've been through just to give the fans Kinej. She did it in a way that people who have struggles with PTSD or mental illness or anything like that can read this and relate to it, not feel like their issues are being belittled. She handled it so respectfully. After that, I love when he says, if you ever cared about me at all, don't follow me. And Inej actually snorts like, I'm so done with you, Kaz Brecker. Come on, that was so cliche and I'm just gonna follow you anyways. The scene where Kaz fought all those people was awesome. We know Kaz is a genius. We've seen that time and again. And we know he's a great fighter, but we haven't actually seen him fight hand-to-hand combat like this, and he just took down so many guys. It was so cool. Okay, they meet the Ravkins, and this is where I lose my mind, because there was this line that was like, a fox-faced man in his mid-20s. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. I dropped the book, stood up, spun in a circle, squealing. Couldn't start reading for 5 minutes. I had to calm down because I knew, fox-faced man in his 20s, who's that gonna be? It's Sturmund, aka Nikolai. I'm not counting this as a spoiler because they told us in the book that Sturmund was the king, and we know that the king is Nikolai. So, if you didn't read the Grisha trilogy, you don't know Sturmund, and you don't know Nikolai, and you don't know what a wonderful person he is. He's one of my favorite male characters, probably ever. I would really like to see an entire trilogy based on Nikolai. I loved when Jesper asked him if he had a flying ship. He was like, no, I have several. Kaz and Nikolai together, they could take over the world together if they wanted to, if they felt like it. Inej's final rematch with Dunyasha was so good because Inej knows that Dunyasha is better trained than her, but she finds a way to beat her anyways. One of my favorite quotes of the whole book was when Inej was fighting Dunyasha. Inej almost felt sorry for her. Dunyasha really believed she was the Lansov heir, and maybe she was. But wasn't that what every girl dreamed? That she'd wake up and find herself a princess? Or blessed with magical powers and a grand destiny? Maybe there were people who lived those lives. Maybe this girl was one of them. But what about the rest of us? What about the nobodies and the nothings, the invisible girls? We learned to hold our heads as if we wear crowns. We learned to wring magic from the ordinary. That was how you survived when you weren't chosen. When there was no royal blood in your veins. When the world owed you nothing, you demanded something of it anyways. And that's just one of my favorite female characters for sure. She's so strong. Her strength isn't really depending on her physical strength, although physically she is skilled. She just has this mental drive. She stays hopeful, even despite all of the terrible things she's been through. And I think she's an inspiration, and I love her so much. Kaz's bluff with Pekka Rollins was amazing. I knew that Kaz wouldn't really do that to his son, but I gotta admit, it was very satisfying to see Pekka Rollins on his knees. And then when Inej is like, will he get there on time? And Kaz is like, for what? It's so fun to see a really smart character because Kaz is physically strong too, but because of his injured leg, focus more on his smarts and how genius he is and his plans. And it's fun to see a leader like that who's not just brute strength. He's cunning and manipulative. Okay, this is a part that I've been dreading talking about because honestly, I'm not sure if I can do it without crying. Matthias's death destroyed me. He's one of the only characters of his type that I genuinely like. You know, like those hulking, stoic, big-hearted type characters. I'm usually just not a fan of them. Matthias, I genuinely really loved, and I think it's because he's so much more complex than that. His whole struggle with being raised, this hate for Grisha in his heart, and then falling in love with Nina, and him having to undo all of that, and his openness to realizing that he's wrong after the whole graveyard battle, the way he just came to terms with everything, and then even encouraged Nina to come to terms with her new power, and the fact that his death was completely meaningless. He didn't die in the midst of trying to get their money. It was just this young Driscoll who had all this hate. I kept thinking, like, this isn't happening. He's not going to really die. I mean, Nina's been given these death powers, so she'll be able to save him. It was one of the worst character deaths for me. I was ugly crying, like sobbing loud, ugly cries. Not like tears running down my face, emotionally crying. Oh, I miss Matthias. I don't know what it is that makes me so attached to the characters in these books. There was this part that communicated exactly how I was feeling about Matthias's death. Wylan says that they were all supposed to make it, and then I think it's Jesper's point of view. Maybe that was naive, the protest of a rich merchant's son who'd only tasted life at the barrel, but Jesper realized he'd been thinking the same thing. After all their mad escapes and close calls, he'd started to believe the six of them were somehow charmed, that his guns, Kaz's brains, Nina's wit, Inej's talents, Wylan's ingenuity, and Matthias's strength had made them somehow untouchable. They might suffer, they might take their knocks, but Wylan was right. In the end, they were all supposed to stay standing. No mourners, said Jesper, surprised by the ache of tears in his throat. No funerals, they all replied, softly. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys how painful this was because you've read the book, and I'm sure you experienced similar things to me. It was like I didn't realize how much I loved him until he was gone, and how much I thought of them all as impervious and like no one was really gonna die. Even though I had been telling myself someone will probably die, it was like I didn't really believe it. Nina and Inej's goodbye really got to me. Their friendship was something I so appreciated. It is so rare to see a female friendship like that, where they support each other other and love each other and also have fun and laugh. Nina thanks her for saving her life, and she said something about like the little things, like laughing at her jokes and never making her feel small. Leigh Bardugo does so many things in these books that are really important to me, and that's probably why I love them so much, like the way she deals with trauma and PTSD, abuse and friendships and relationships. For a second at the end of this book, I thought we were not going to get Kanej resolution. I thought maybe they were going to part ways, and I was like, no, please, no. But that didn't happen, thankfully. The last two scenes, like Kaz and Inej and Pekka Rollins, were so great. Kaz says that Jesper's missed around the slat. Progress for Kaz to say that, to express that Jesper's missed, and Inej says something about like what a big deal that is coming from Kaz. He bought her a boat and a berth so she can come back to the city when she needs to, and she's like, yeah, I'm not done with the city yet. And he's like, he wasn't wearing his gloves. He didn't even need to take off his gloves. He wasn't wearing them. Guys, oh, I'm so happy about this. Basically, Kaz is going to become Batman, and Inej and him are going to take down all the corruption in the city of Ketterdam. This is the only couple where holding hands is like so important, and it's such a serious thing. It was enough to give me hope for the future for them, that they're going to best these things that they've been through, that they're going to push through it together. He got her parents here. She grabs for his sleeve and he holds her up, and then she's like, come meet them with me. And he's like, wait a second, is my tie straight? Oh my gosh, that whole part, and then the whole that's the laugh thing was that end scene where Inej is threatening Rylands. Like, can we just take a minute to appreciate the fact that the man who ruined Kaz's life is scared of Inej? That last thing with the crow toy, I was like, oh! And maybe in the quiet hours he'd raise a glass to the men like him, his fellow architects of misfortune who had helped raise Brecker and his crew. He'd drink to the whole sorry lot of them, but mostly to the poor fools who didn't know what trouble was coming. Finally, they don't underestimate Kaz, because Kaz is gonna take down all these people. That's all I'm gonna say about Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Obviously, I loved this book. It was so amazing. It's one of those books that I'm just gonna push on everyone. Read this book, please read this book. It's so important to me, the things that Leigh Bardugo handles in this series, not to mention the fact that it's just so much fun, funny and exciting and epic, and I think everyone should read it. If you loved this book as much as me, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there were things that you didn't like. I'm Miss Emma Reads a Lot on Instagram and Tumblr and Goodreads. If you want to check out my social media, I'll put all the links down below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Don't forget to check out my Six of Crows playlist. If you feel like listening to that, I'll also put the link down in the description. That's it for today, and I will see you soon with a new video.